When my husband asked, "Is the juice good?" I thought it was just another one of his small, harmless questions, the kind he always asked at dinner, the kind that made me feel like we were still a normal couple after 41 years of marriage. I lifted the glass, swirled the orange liquid that looked no different than any other juice I'd had in our Georgia kitchen, and smiled. "I haven't tried it yet, Harold." But before I could bring it close to my lips, his mother, Evelyn, swept past me like a gust of winter wind, her hand snatching the glass with the same entitlement she'd carried all her life. "Oh, please," she said, not even looking at me. "She doesn't appreciate good things anyway." And then she drank it. A long, greedy swallow. Her lipstick stained the rim. She set the empty glass down on the counter with a satisfied click. That sound, sharp, final, felt like something cracking in the air. I looked at Harold, expecting he'd roll his eyes the way he always did when Evelyn belittled me, but instead, his face drained of color, his jaw tightened, his breath hitched like someone had punched him in the ribs. "Mom," his voice broke. "Mom, why did you drink that?" Evelyn blinked at him, confused. "What do you mean? It's juice. What is wrong with you?" But Harold didn't answer. His hands shook uncontrollably. He reached for the glass, inspected the inside as if hoping she hadn't truly finished it. Then he staggered back, gripping the counter for support, his eyes darting between me and the sink like he was searching for a way out of the room. "Harold," I whispered. "What's going on?" He didn't look at me. He just whispered, "This wasn't supposed to happen." And right then, my heart dropped into a cold, hollow space, because I had seen my husband worried before. Tired, upset, even angry, but I had never, not once in my entire life, seen pure panic ripple across his face like that. Not panic for me, not panic for her, panic for something he had done. Evelyn brushed him off with one dismissive wave. "Oh, stop acting ridiculous. It was just juice." But within minutes, she wasn't standing as confidently. Her breathing hitched. Her hand found the back of a chair. She blinked rapidly as if trying to focus her vision. "Why, is it so warm in here?" she asked. The thermostat was set to 72. Her skin flushed, then paled. Sweat beaded along her hairline. She gripped her stomach. "Harold, what was in that drink?" He didn't answer. He just stood there, trembling, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, fear. Not the kind of fear you feel walking alone at night, not the kind of fear that comes from an argument or a loud noise. No, this was deep, primal fear, the kind that whispers, "Something is terribly wrong in this house." As Evelyn stumbled into a chair, gasping, I ran to her. "Evelyn, look at me. Can you breathe? Tell me what hurts." But she slapped my hand away, anger still stronger than her failing body. "Don't touch me," she snapped. "You probably—" She didn't finish that sentence. Her head dropped, her breathing ragged, and Harold, instead of rushing to help his mother, paced back and forth in front of the sink like a man waiting for a verdict he already feared. I didn't mean—" He squeezed his eyes shut. "It wasn't for her." His voice sounded like gravel, low and breaking. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, slow and deliberate, because there was only one other person in that kitchen, and the drink had been handed to me. The realization slid into my chest like ice water. "Harold," I said softly, carefully, "what was in the juice?" He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't love, wasn't regret, not even fear. It was something much darker. Something calculated, something he had been hiding. For weeks, maybe months. "It was just to calm you down," he whispered, "just enough to make you manageable." The room spun. My world, my marriage, tilted on its axis. Manageable. A word used for children, pets, and things you wanted to control. Not a wife, not a partner, not me. But before I could say anything, Evelyn's breathing hitched violently, her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed to the floor. Harold froze. His knees buckled, and that's when I understood the truth. Whatever he had planned for me had just gone horribly wrong, and the man I trusted for 41 years had been hoping I'd drink that juice. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911 with hands that refused to stop shaking. My voice broke as I gave our address. As I knelt beside Evelyn, listening to her labored, uneven breaths, I felt something crack deep inside me. Not fear, not shock, but something older. Something that had been waiting too long to wake up. The first whisper of a question that would later change everything. What else has my husband been doing behind my back? I always thought danger announced itself with loud footsteps, slammed doors, or the kind of arguments that shake walls. But that night, danger entered my home wearing silence. Quiet, careful, calculated silence. It began with a glass of orange juice, glowing under the kitchen lights like it had nothing to hide. Harold held it out to me with a strange stiffness in his wrist, the kind I'd only seen when he was nervous before doctor's appointments or tax audits. "Is the juice good?" he asked, voice too casual, too rehearsed. I didn't know it then, but he'd spent the whole day waiting for this moment. I leaned forward to lift the glass, my glass, the one he'd poured specifically for me, when Evelyn swept between us like she owned the air we breathed. At 62 years old, I'd grown patient with a lot of things, including my mother-in-law's lifelong habit of taking whatever wasn't hers. But nothing prepared me for the way she snatched that glass from my fingers, lifted it without hesitation, and drank every drop as if it had been poured for her. "Well," she said with that familiar bite in her voice, "at least I know how to enjoy something nice." Then she exhaled, satisfied. "Honestly, Harold, stop wasting good juice on her." Normally, Harold would offer a weak laugh or murmur something under his breath, the way he did whenever Evelyn dismissed me. But tonight, he didn't laugh. He didn't smirk. He didn't say a word. He just froze. I watched the color drain from his face as if someone had reached inside him and turned a switch. His breath hitched, his fingers trembled, and his eyes, those soft brown eyes I'd looked into for over 4 decades, filled with a fear so intense it prickled my skin. "Mom," he whispered, staring at her empty glass. "Why did you drink that?" Evelyn scoffed. "Because it was sitting there. Because you handed it to your wife like some love-struck schoolboy. Because I wanted it. Why?" She narrowed her eyes. "What's with that face, Harold?" He didn't answer. He reached for the glass, checking the rim, the bottom, the color of the last drop clinging to the edge, as if hoping, praying she hadn't swallowed every bit. When he lifted his eyes again, he looked sick. "Mom, it wasn't for you." A cold metallic chill slid along my spine. Not hunger, not shock. Something deeper, intuition. A sense I'd honed across a lifetime of being dismissed, talked over, overlooked. Something inside me whispered, "That drink was meant for you." Before I could speak, Evelyn waved him off. "You're acting like a fool. It's juice." But only a minute later, the bravado in her voice cracked. She pressed her hand to her forehead. Her breathing grew uneven. Sweat glistened along the bridge of her nose. "Why is it so warm in here?" she muttered. "It's not," I told her. "It's 72 degrees. But she didn't seem to hear me. Her throat tightened. Her fingers fumbled for the counter. Her eyes glassed over. "Harold," she rasped. "What was—" She didn't finish. Her knees buckled. I rushed toward her, instincts overriding decades of hurt. "Evelyn, look at me. Breathe. Tell me what you're feeling." But she shoved my hands away even as her body trembled. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "You—" Her words dissolved into a choke. Meanwhile, Harold stood motionless as stone, not helping, not calling 911, not touching his mother, just staring at the empty glass like it contained the ruins of his entire life. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he whispered. "Not to her." The words dropped into my chest like a cinder block. "Harold," I said carefully, trying to steady my voice, What was in that juice? He swallowed hard. His lips parted. His eyes flicked toward me, guilty, terrified, pleading, and then away. He couldn't meet my gaze. "It wasn't going to hurt you," he said softly. "Just slow you down, make things easier." My heart cracked open, slow and jagged. Easier. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Easier for who? He didn't answer. He didn't have to, because in that moment I saw it clearly. Every late-night whisper between him and his mother that stopped when I walked in, every new pill bottle he claimed the doctor prescribed but never let me read, every time he insisted I should rest more, every time he told neighbors I'd been forgetful lately, every moment he'd taken my arm a little too tightly, guiding me through crowds. "Evelyn wasn't supposed to drink it," he muttered, voice cracking. "It should have been you." The kitchen blurred, the world tilted, but beneath the dizziness, something inside me rose slowly, like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. I grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with hands still steady enough to protect a life, even hers. As I knelt beside Evelyn, Harold paced, panicked, whispering half-formed excuses to no one. And for the first time in my marriage, I realized the truth. My husband had been planning something long before that glass touched my fingers, and whatever he had intended for me, I had just witnessed the first part of it go horribly wrong. People like Harold and Evelyn don't become bold enough to betray you overnight. They build their courage inch by inch, year by year, brick by brick, on top of every kindness you gave them, every sacrifice you made. And as I sat on the edge of the hospital waiting room that night, my hands still trembling from dialing 911, my throat burning with questions that had no answers, I finally saw the history of my life with them clearly, not like memories, more like evidence. I was 21 when I first met Harold, back when I believed marriages were built on partnership, not endurance. He had an easy smile, big dreams, and a gentle way of touching the small of my back whenever he walked past me in the grocery store. It felt like affection then. Later, I learned it was possession, but naive love doesn't see the difference. We married young, worked even younger, and built a life brick by brick. Him repairing HVAC systems around town, me balancing 2 part-time jobs at the library and the diner. When we bought our first house, it wasn't because of luck. It was because I saved every dollar I ever earned for nearly 12 years. I clipped coupons, took double shifts, stayed late after closing to mop floors. I told myself it was for our future, even when I was the only one pulling us toward it. Evelyn never saw it that way. From the very beginning, she made sure her son, and possibly the entire church choir, knew that I came from nothing. She said it with the same tone she used for weather forecasts and casserole recipes, as if it were simply a fact of nature. And Harold, wanting to keep the peace, never corrected her. He let her seed herself deep into our marriage like ivy climbing a wall. But even then, I stayed. Not because I lacked pride, but because I believed in commitment. And because for decades, I thought Harold was simply caught in the middle, trying to balance being a husband and a son. I blamed her. I forgave him. Years blurred into decades. I raised his children, cared for his father in the months before he passed, kept the house running through every flu season, job loss, and holiday meal. When Harold injured his back and couldn't work for 6 months, I picked up extra shifts, waking at 4 a.m. and collapsing into bed past midnight. I didn't complain. I believed this was what wives did. When his brother died suddenly and left his 2 kids with no one but Evelyn, who was already slipping into early dementia, who stepped in? I did. I cooked for them, cleaned for them, helped the teenagers apply to community college. I learned to live with Evelyn under my roof for 2 years straight. Listening to her criticize my cooking while eating every bite, watching her rearrange the furniture I set up, hearing her whisper to neighbors that Harold deserved a better wife. Even then, I stayed. Even when Harold began changing, little things at first, forgetting to pay bills, asking me to sign documents without explaining them, insisting I was mixing things up when I knew I had said or done something clearly. I chalked it up to stress, to age, to life wearing us thin. Then came the pills, small amber bottles that never stayed in one place long enough for me to read the labels. Prescriptions he claimed were for back pain or sleep. Sometimes he would hand me one at night, saying it would help me rest, and if I refused, he'd sigh, "You're being paranoid again." I never thought my own husband would weaponize my kindness, my trust, my exhaustion. But standing in that hospital waiting room as nurses rushed Evelyn behind double doors, the puzzle pieces of the last 15 years finally clicked into place. The comments he'd made to our neighbors, "She gets confused sometimes," suddenly weren't harmless. The times he offered to handle our finances because it's easier if I manage it all suddenly weren't generosity. The moments he insisted I needed more rest, more pills, more dependence, suddenly weren't care. They were preparation for the moment he would decide I no longer served his life as easily as I used to. Evelyn had always been cruel, yes, but she had never been subtle. Harold, however, had learned the art of quiet manipulation, gaslighting wrapped in gentleness, control disguised as protection. And because I had spent decades pouring love, time, and sacrifice into this family, I didn't see how easily he had begun constructing a narrative where I was the fragile one, the forgetful one, the unstable one. A narrative that could one day justify replacing my choices with his. What chilled me most was not the juice itself, but the realization that he had likely been testing boundaries for years, seeing how far he could go without me noticing. And I had helped him, unintentionally, by always being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who didn't make trouble. As a Black woman in my 60s, I had weathered storms far larger than one man's betrayal, but betrayal at home, betrayal in the place where you sleep, cook, pray, and build your life, that's a different kind of wound. That night, it opened wide. I had given Harold half a lifetime, 41 years of loyalty, labor, forgiveness, and love, and he had handed me a glass of poison disguised as care. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I simply sat there, hands folded tightly in my lap, and let a new truth settle into my bones. If the man you've spent your life protecting suddenly looks at you like you're an obstacle, you'd better start protecting yourself. The night after Evelyn collapsed, the house felt different. Not quieter. Our home had known silence before, but heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Harold and I drove home from the hospital in a silence so thick it pressed against my chest. He didn't look at me once. Not when we walked through the sliding doors, not when we stepped into the parking lot, not even when the cold air hit his face like a slap. He moved like a man carrying a secret too large for his body. When we got home, he went straight to the kitchen, turned on the sink, and began rinsing every cup, glass, and bottle he could reach. The faucet roared as if he hoped the sound would wash away everything that happened. I stood in the doorway watching him scrub the same glass over and over, his hands red from the hot water. "Harold," I said gently, "look at me." He didn't. Instead, he whispered, "You weren't supposed to know anything. You weren't supposed to see." His fingers tightened around the glass. It wasn't supposed to go this way. A chill slid through me, not fear this time, but clarity. What was supposed to happen, Harold? He set the glass down with a trembling thud, but the answer never came. He just walked past me, brushing my shoulder with a stiffness that felt colder than anger. Distance. Calculated distance. He shut himself in the bedroom, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen with the faint scent of citrus still lingering in the air. I stared at that closed door for a long time, feeling something inside me break open. Not loudly, quietly. The kind of break that changes the shape of a person forever. I moved to the couch because I couldn't sleep beside a man who had hoped I'd drink something meant to disable me. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat in the dark, letting my thoughts drift like slow-moving smoke. At 2:17 a.m., the house creaked the way old houses do, boards settling, pipes cooling. But that night, every sound felt like a warning. I kept hearing Harold's whisper at the hospital. It wasn't supposed to be her. And then the second whisper, quieter, almost embarrassed. It should have been you. It echoed in my head until I couldn't tell if I was remembering it or reliving it. I finally stood up and walked toward the hallway mirror. I hadn't looked at myself properly in years. Not really looked, but that night something made me raise my chin and stare. My hair, silver at the roots, framed eyes that had once believed they were loved. Eyes carrying 40 years of devotion and 40 years of small wounds. I traced the lines along my cheeks, the ones made not by age but by exhaustion. And then, in a whisper almost too soft for the mirror to hear, I said, "When did you stop seeing me? When did I stop seeing myself?" I pressed my palms against the cold glass. The woman staring back at me looked tired, yes, but she also looked like she was waking up. A memory surfaced, unexpected and sharp. Years ago, before Harold began changing, his father once told me, "In every marriage there's a moment that tests your soul." I had thought mine had come years ago during the hardest financial years, or when Harold's long hours pulled him away, or when Evelyn moved in. I was wrong. Tonight was my moment. The moment I realized that the danger in my home wasn't bad luck, or miscommunication, or a stressed husband losing his way. It was intentional, designed, and I had been inches away from falling into a trap I didn't even know was being built beneath my feet. A single tear slid down my cheek, not from sadness, but from clarity. I wiped it away. At 3:04 a.m., I walked into Harold's office. The door was unlocked. He always kept it locked. Inside, the room felt stale, like secrets were stored in the air. Papers scattered on the desk. A small safe slightly ajar. Prescription bottles, empty, unmarked, lined the drawer like soldiers. And there, sitting on top of a stack of bills, was a pamphlet for a long-term care facility. Crown Ridge Memory and Wellness Center. Comprehensive supervision for adults no longer capable of independent decision-making. The date circled on the brochure? Next week. My heart thudded so hard I felt it in my teeth. A folder lay beside it, thick with papers, medical forms, pre-admission evaluations, a checklist titled Behavioral Decline Symptoms Report. Next to confusion, Harold had written increasing. Next to instability, he'd written concerning. Next to needs supervision, he'd checked yes. The handwriting shook. Not from honesty. He wasn't shaking when he wrote it. It shook because lies always tremble on the page. And then I saw a line that made my knees weaken. Family request. Patient should not be informed of placement until the day of transfer. I covered my mouth to keep from crying out. He had planned everything. The juice, the narrative, the forgetfulness he'd told neighbors, the doctor's visits he encouraged, the pill bottles he insisted would help me sleep. I wasn't losing my independence. He was preparing to steal it. I closed the folder gently and stood there in the dark office with my hands trembling, not from fear, but from something else entirely. Something deeper, older, stronger. Resolve. At 3:21 a.m., I walked back to the mirror. I looked at myself again, and this time I didn't look for answers. I looked for strength, and I found it staring back at me. "Enough," I whispered. That word was the moment everything shifted. The moment the victim in me stepped aside and the survivor stepped forward. The moment I realized Harold had underestimated the one person he should have never crossed. Because a woman who has given her whole life to protecting a family becomes unstoppable when she finally decides to protect herself. By sunrise, the decision was no longer a whisper inside me. It was a pulse, steady and undeniable. I stood in the kitchen watching the light spill across the tile floor, turning the room soft and honey-colored, a cruel contrast to the cold truth sitting in Harold's office just a few feet away. The pamphlet, the forms, the lies he had spoon-fed me for months, the drink meant for me. I didn't scream. I didn't wake him. I didn't even touch a single piece of evidence. I simply brewed myself a cup of coffee the way I had every morning for decades, 2 sugars, no cream, and let the warmth settle into my palms as my mind sharpened. A woman doesn't survive 6 decades on this earth without learning the power of the first step. My first step was simple. Stop giving Harold control of anything he could weaponize. By 8:30 a.m., I had showered, dressed, and pulled my hair back into a neat bun. I looked steady, predictable, normal, the perfect mask. Harold was still asleep, or pretending to be, when I walked past our bedroom door. For the first time, I felt nothing toward him. No warmth, no nostalgia, no hope. Just distance. My car keys jingled softly as I picked them up from the bowl near the door. He must have heard it because his voice floated out, weak and unsteady. Where are you going?" I paused. "Grocery store," I answered. Calm, detached. He didn't ask which one. He didn't ask why I was leaving so early. He didn't even get out of bed. That alone told me the panic from last night still held him hostage. But what he didn't know, what he would never expect, was that I wasn't driving to any grocery store. I was going to the bank. The moment I stepped inside the branch, cool air brushed my face and the faint smell of ink and polished counters wrapped around me. I'd always hated how sterile banks felt, but today, that sterility felt like safety, structure, documentation, neutral ground, something Harold couldn't twist or manipulate. A young teller named Ms. Boyd, no older than 25, greeted me with a bright smile. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" Her friendliness felt like sunshine after a long winter. "I'd like to review all accounts associated with my name," I said. "All of them?" "Yes," I replied. "Every last one." She guided me to a desk, typed my name, and her eyebrows slowly rose as the screen filled. "Well," she said gently, "you have more accounts than most people." I smiled tightly. I know, I opened each of them myself. But I also knew Harold had been managing them for 10 years. Ms. Boyd turned the monitor slightly toward me. "Just confirm, are all these joint accounts still active?" I scanned the list. Yes, yes, yes. And every yes felt like a bruise I'd forgotten I had. Savings, checking, retirement, investment, insurance, each one tied to a man who now saw me as a problem to be hidden away. "I'd like to separate my name," I said calmly. "Remove him wherever possible. Freeze transfers on everything else." Her fingers paused over the keyboard. "Ma'am, are you sure?" I met her eyes. "Very." And with that single word, a decade of quiet manipulation began to crumble. She reviewed documents with me, line by line, page by page, and I signed them with a hand that barely trembled. The more I signed, the more I breathed. Like every signature was cutting a string Harold had wrapped around me. After an hour, she handed me a folder. "These accounts are now solely in your name. The others are frozen until you authorize changes." A single tear slipped down my cheek, uninvited but honest. "Thank you," I whispered. I wasn't done. From the bank, I drove straight to the pharmacy, the one Harold always picked up his medications from. When I stepped up to the counter and told the pharmacist my name, his friendly smile faded into confusion. I'm sorry," he said, flipping through his logbook. "You don't have any prescriptions here, not recent ones." "No sleeping aids? No anxiety medication? Nothing my husband might have requested?" He shook his head. "Ma'am, we haven't filled anything for you since 2018. The ground beneath my feet shifted. Then what had he been giving me? The pharmacist leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You know, your husband has been picking up things under his name. Supplements, herbal extracts, liquid compounds. We assumed they were for him. Did he ever mention they were for me?" His eyes widened. No, he said nothing like that. Something inside my chest tightened, not with panic, but with confirmation, the kind that steels a woman, not breaks her. I thanked him and stepped outside, letting the cold air slam into me like truth. My next stop, the post office. Harold handled all our mail. I had let him, trusted him, but now I needed to know. What had I missed? When the clerk looked up my name, she frowned. "Ma'am, we've been holding several certified letters for you. They required your signature." My heart hammered. How many? She disappeared into the back and returned with a stack thick enough to make my hands shake as I accepted it. Hospital statements, billing notices, letters from the county office, even a warning from Social Security about changes made to my documentation. All hidden by Harold, all signed for by him, all confirming the same thing. He had been preparing to make me legally disappear long before he ever poured that juice. When I returned to my car and closed the door, the quiet wrapped around me like armor. I placed the letters beside me and exhaled slowly. The first step had been taken, and it was more powerful than any scream, any accusation, any confrontation could have been, because now Harold no longer had access to my money. He no longer controlled my records. He no longer controlled my narrative. And most importantly, he had no idea what I had done. I gripped the steering wheel, feeling strength return to my bones. Let him think I'm still the same quiet woman who trusts him. Let him think last night was just an accident. Let him think I'm fragile, confused, dependent. Let him think anything he wants. Because now, I was preparing for war. Harold must have sensed the shift in the air before he even saw the bank papers or the stack of certified letters. Predators can smell when their prey stops trembling. They panic when the fear goes quiet. I walked into the house that afternoon expecting silence, expecting him to be pacing or pretending nothing was wrong. But Harold wasn't in the living room, or the bedroom, or the kitchen. His car was in the driveway, the TV still humming faintly in the background. But he was nowhere to be found. Then I heard it. A frantic rustling in his office. The same office whose door he usually kept locked. Papers shuffled. Cabinets banged open. Something crashed to the floor. Harold was breathing hard, the way a man breathes when he is unraveling. When I stepped into the doorway, he spun around so fast the color drained from his cheeks. He was clutching his safe, its contents spilled across the carpet like a confession he couldn't stuff back inside. Receipts, pill bottles, notebooks, a ledger with my name scribbled over and over. "Where did you go?" he asked, voice cracking like a teenager caught sneaking out. "You were gone for hours." "I told you," I said evenly. "Grocery store." "No," he snapped. "No, you weren't. You think I don't know? You think I don't notice things?" His voice rose, jagged and panicked. "You went somewhere. You did something." For 40 years, this man had barely cared where I spent my afternoons. Now, suddenly, he demanded answers like a drill sergeant. "I ran errands," I said calmly. He stepped closer. "What errands?" "Personal ones." His face twitched, something dark flickering behind his eyes. "Why didn't you wake me? Why didn't you tell me you were leaving the house?" I gave him a stare so steady it cut through his hysteria. "I didn't know I needed your permission." The silence after that sentence wasn't quiet. It was explosive. Harold's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like he was drowning. "You're being difficult," he said finally. "You're not yourself. This attitude isn't normal." There it is, I thought. The first punch of gaslighting, the reflex of every manipulator losing their grip. He took a step toward me, palms open in a mock gesture of calm. "I'm worried about you," he said, forcing a softness into his voice that sounded brittle. "You've been overwhelmed lately. Confused. You're under stress. Why don't we sit and talk?" He moved to guide me toward the couch. I stepped back. His facade cracked again. "Why are you acting like this?" he demanded. "Like what?" "Like you're hiding something." I let the accusation hang in the air, then I turned it back to him with a single question. "What exactly do you think I'm hiding, Harold?" His throat bobbed, his eyes darted, his hands trembled. Only guilty men shake like that. He dropped into his chair, fingers digging into his scalp. "My God," he muttered, rocking slightly. "Everything is falling apart." "Because of the juice?" I asked quietly. He froze. Completely. Then he looked up at me, eyes wide, lips parted. "I told you," he whispered. "It wasn't meant for her. And it was meant for me." He slammed his fist against the desk. "You're twisting things. You've always twisted things." I didn't flinch. He stood abruptly and began pacing. "You don't understand what you've put me through. You don't understand what it's like watching someone decline. Everyone told me I had to take action. Everyone said I had to do what was best for you." "Everyone?" I asked. "Or just you?" He looked away. Cowardice always looks away. "You don't remember things like you used to." He tried again, desperate. "You misplace items. You repeat yourself. You get tired easily. You've been slipping. And I've been the one carrying everything." I almost laughed. I almost choked. Because every symptom he listed were the symptoms he had been feeding into my body, through pills, through manipulation, through lies. Instead, I asked, "And the paperwork, the memory center, the evaluations you forged?" His lips trembled. "It was just in case." "In case of what?" I pressed. "In case I didn't drink the juice fast enough?" The room fell into a stunned, shuddering silence, broken only by his ragged breathing. Harold's panic shifted then, not softer, not apologetic, more frantic, more unstable. He rushed toward me suddenly, gripping my arms too tightly. "You can't do this," he hissed. "You can't leave me with everything. I can't fix this alone. I need you to calm down and act normal." "Normal?" I repeated. "Like drinking whatever you hand me? Like signing whatever you put in front of me? Like letting you decide when I get to think for myself?" He blinked rapidly. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "You're exposed." He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. Then his desperation took a new shape. Rage dipped in fear. "If you keep acting like this, I will have no choice but to file for emergency guardianship," he threatened. "The state listens to husbands, and you've already given them plenty of reasons to think you're unstable." I smiled. Calm, cold, clear. "You think you're the only one who can document things?" His face fell. Because predators only win when their victims stay quiet. He didn't know I'd already cut the accounts, frozen the transfers, gathered the letters, taken the evidence, prepared the ground beneath his feet to crumble. But his panic, that was proof enough. And as he shouted after me, demanding to know what I had done, who I had talked to, where I had gone, I walked out of his office without giving him a single answer, because he had just confirmed the thing I needed most. A man panics this hard only when he realizes he's already lost control. The morning after Harold's meltdown, I woke up with a strange clarity, like someone had wiped fog off the windows of my life. For months, maybe years, I had walked through my own home as if underwater, moving slow, doubting myself, letting someone else define what was normal and what was concerning. But now I knew better. Now I had proof. Proof in writing. Proof in intention. Proof in panic. And what people like Harold fear most is a woman who finally knows the truth. I didn't call him. I didn't cook breakfast. I didn't ask how he'd slept. I simply got dressed, gathered my documents, and walked out the front door before he even realized I was gone. My first stop was the hospital, specifically the wing where Evelyn had been admitted, not to check on her, not yet, but to speak to the only person who had looked me in the eye last night with genuine concern, Nurse Talbot. She was a black woman around my age, maybe a few years older, with silver coils pulled back in a tight puff and eyes that missed nothing. Last night, she had leaned toward me at the nurse's station and whispered, "That wasn't a lethal dose. It was meant to mimic symptoms." Today, when she saw me standing at her desk, she set her clipboard down immediately. "You came early," she said quietly, guiding me into an empty consultation room. "You okay?" "No," I answered honestly, "but I'm finally starting to understand." She nodded, folded her arms, and waited, like she could sense the story waiting to spill. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself say the things I had swallowed for years. He's been telling people I've been confused, forgetful, that I need supervision. "And do you believe that?" she asked. "No." "Good," she said firmly, "because what you're describing isn't aging, it's conditioning." I felt my breath catch. Conditioning? She pulled her chair closer. "People don't always need to use violence to take your freedom. Sometimes they use fear, sometimes isolation, sometimes medication. Just enough to make you doubt yourself, just enough to make others doubt you too." My fingers tightened around the folder in my lap. "So this isn't me losing my mind," I whispered. "This is him trying to make me lose it." "Exactly." The word hit me like a blow to the chest, heavy, honest, final. "I need help," I said softly. "And you're doing the right thing," she replied. "But you need more than just a nurse. You need someone who understands legal language, guardianship laws, medical manipulation, a professional who deals with elder abuse." I flinched at the phrase, elder abuse, but she held up a hand. "I know it's a harsh term," she said gently, "but what he's doing fits the definition." I swallowed, hard. "Who can help me?" She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a card. "Her name is Attorney Camille Rhodes. She's part of the Elder Rights Advocacy Network. She specializes in cases where spouses or adult children try to force guardianship or commit someone without cause." I stared at the card like it was a lifeline. It was. "She'll ask for details," the nurse continued. "Give her everything. Copies, dates, any time he gave you medication, any moment he claimed you were slipping, the juice incident, his reaction, all of it." I nodded. "And you should also consider something else," she added, "a cognitive evaluation." I stiffened. She squeezed my hand. "Not because you need it, but because a clean evaluation protects you. If he tries to claim you're incompetent, you'll already have documentation disproving it." For the first time in days, maybe weeks, I felt something warm stir inside me. Possibility. "Thank you," I whispered. "You're not the first woman to walk through this," she said softly, "and you won't be the last. But you're one of the few who's catching it early enough to fight back." Her words settled into my bones. By noon, I was sitting in the office of Attorney Camille Rhodes, a woman with crisp glasses, a navy blazer, and a voice so calm it felt like armor. I handed her my folder. She read silently, thoroughly. Her expression sharpened with every page. Finally, she closed the folder and looked up. "This," she said matter-of-factly, "is a textbook case of attempted coercive control combined with intentional medical misrepresentation." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning your husband has been building a false medical narrative in an attempt to push you into a memory care facility? And the juice incident." She tapped the folder. "That was meant to accelerate the symptoms he planned to report." My stomach twisted. "Can he still do it?" I asked. "Not if we act first." "What do we do?" She leaned forward, her tone shifting into strategy. "Step 1, secure all your financial independence. Step 2, create a legal record documenting his recent behavior. Step 3, obtain an independent medical evaluation. Step 4, stay unpredictable. Do not confront him. Do not reveal what you know. Let him show his hand." "I can do that," I said. "Good. And one more thing. If he escalates, you call me immediately." On my way out, she added gently, "You're stronger than you think. You just needed someone to tell you the truth." As I stepped outside into the afternoon sun, something inside me settled, the first breath of real strength I'd felt in years. I wasn't alone. I wasn't confused. I wasn't imagining things. I had a name for what was happening. I had allies. I had a plan. And Harold? He had no idea that the woman he thought was weak had just armed herself with truth. Harold always liked to think of himself as the reasonable one, the calm center of every argument, but manipulators only stay calm when they're winning. The moment the ground shifts under their feet, they scramble for higher ground, any ground, and the next 48 hours proved exactly who Harold was when his control began to slip. The morning after I met with Attorney Rhodes, I woke to the sound of voices in the living room, low, urgent male voices, not Harold's, deeper, structured, official. I stepped into the hall to find two strangers standing in my home, one in a slate gray suit with a briefcase, the other with a tablet and a county badge clipped to his belt. Harold stood beside them, sweating, wringing his hands like a guilty schoolboy pretending to be the concerned husband. "Oh, good. You're awake," he said too brightly. "These gentlemen are here to help." Help. That word felt like a blade dipped in honey. The man in the suit stepped forward. "Mrs. Collins, I didn't invite you into my home," I said calmly, cutting him off. Harold's eyes widened. He wasn't expecting that. For years, I'd been accommodating, polite, agreeable, the kind of woman who offered lemonade to strangers even when they interrupted dinner. But not today. "Mrs. Collins," the man tried again, "your husband reached out to us with some concerns. Concerns that don't involve you," I said, my tone even but my chest thundering, "and concerns he didn't discuss with me." The man hesitated. Harold jumped in quickly. "She's been confused," Harold blurted, his voice trembling. "She's been forgetting things, leaving the stove on, wandering outside at night. I'm just trying to keep her safe." Every lie slid off his tongue easier than the next. Except they weren't just lies. They were rehearsed lies, practiced lies, the kind you only tell when you've planned ahead. "I never left the stove on," I said evenly. Harold's jaw clenched. "Last week, you don't remember." "No," I said. "You turned it on while reheating leftovers and blamed it on me." The man with the badge cleared his throat. "We're here to conduct a welfare check, standard procedure." "Standard for what?" I asked sharply. Harold rushed forward. "I'm worried she's dangerous." "To who?" I asked, voice cold. He faltered. "To herself. I mean, she's not herself lately." That's when the man in the suit stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your husband also mentioned an incident with medication." "Ask him," I replied softly, "what medication he's referring to." All eyes turned to Harold. He swallowed hard. It was the sleep supplements. You've been taking too many." "Lie." I took a step closer. "Would you like to check our pharmacy records?" Silence. "Because I did," I continued. "I haven't had a prescription filled there since 2018. You've been picking things up under your name. Bottles I never asked for. Bottles I never touched." The men exchanged looks. Harold's composure crumbled. "She's manipulating this whole thing," he snapped. "She's staging it. She's angry at me, and now she's trying to make me look—" "Like what?" I asked. "Like the man who tried to give me something meant to induce symptoms you document later?" The man with the badge looked sharply at Harold. "Is that true?" Harold floundered. "It was herbal. It wasn't dangerous. It was supposed to calm her down." "Her," I repeated. "The woman standing right here in front of you." For a long moment, the room held its breath. Then the man with the badge stepped forward. "Sir, we'll need to speak with you privately." "What? No, why? I didn't do anything wrong," Harold protested. "Protocol," the man replied, gesturing toward the porch. As they walked out, I turned to the man with the briefcase. "Who are you, really?" He hesitated, then exhaled. "I'm an attorney. Your husband contacted me to begin an emergency guardianship petition." Guardianship. There it was, the threat he'd made out of desperation, already in motion before he ever said it out loud. "He said he needed to act quickly," the attorney added, "that your behavior was deteriorating, that he feared for your safety." My heart thudded. Then I met the attorney's gaze and said calmly, Do you see any signs of deterioration? He looked me over, the posture, the clarity in my eyes, the documents in my hand, the steadiness in my voice. No, ma'am, he admitted quietly. I don't. He closed his briefcase. I won't be moving forward with this. Your husband didn't tell me the full story. When he left, Harold was brought back inside, pale, shaken, humiliated. The men gave him a stern warning about falsifying welfare claims and advised him to de-escalate tensions at home. But Harold wasn't the type to de-escalate. He was the type to implode. The moment the door shut behind them, he turned to me, rage, fear, and humiliation twisting his face into something almost unrecognizable. You're trying to destroy me, he whispered. No, I said simply. I'm trying to save myself. He staggered back like the truth had slapped him. You think you can win? You think anyone will believe you over me? I don't need anyone to believe me, I replied. I have evidence. His breathing grew fast, erratic. His voice cracked. I swear, if you ruin my life— I'm not ruining anything, I said. You did that yourself. He stared at me with pure hatred, then pure terror, because for the first time in his life, he saw that the woman he thought he could silence now had the power to silence him. The moment the men left the house, the silence that followed was not peace. It was strategy. Harold retreated to the bedroom like a wounded animal, pacing, muttering, slamming drawers, frantic in the way only a man losing control becomes frantic. But I didn't follow him. I didn't argue. I didn't confront. I let the silence do the talking, because silence unnerves men like him more than shouting ever could. Instead, I walked to the dining table. The same table where I had endured birthdays, holidays, arguments, reconciliations, and laid out every document I had gathered over the past 2 days. Bank records, frozen accounts, certified letters, pharmacy statements, copies of evaluations Harold had faked, the pamphlet from the memory center, my notes from Nurse Talbot and Attorney Rhodes, even the time-stamped text message from the pharmacist confirming no prescriptions had been filled under my name for years. One by one, I spread them out like tiles in a mosaic. The truth was right there, in black and white, undeniable and damning. But it needed structure. It needed order. It needed to be presented in a way no judge, no investigator, no guardian board could ignore. So I organized. I created folders: financial manipulation, medical gaslighting, coercive control, false guardianship, preparation, physical evidence, witness statements, timeline of incidents. Each section grew quickly, too quickly, disturbingly quickly. Because once a woman starts documenting the things she's endured, she realizes just how much she is normalized. At noon, I opened the blinds and let sunlight pour in, not for the house, for me, for clarity. Then I made the most important phone call of the day. Ms. Rhodes, I said when the attorney answered. It's me. I'm ready to proceed. Her voice was steady. Good. Then it's time to build your file. I've started. Now you need witnesses, she said. People outside the home who have seen how he speaks to you, how he minimizes you, any comments he's made that contradict his narrative. Even small encounters matter. I swallowed. I don't know if anyone would want to get involved. You'd be surprised, she replied. When one woman speaks up, others feel seen. That sentence stayed with me long after the call ended, so I started with the easiest person, Mrs. Turner, our neighbor across the street. She was in her 70s, sharp as a hawk, and had watched our household like someone reading a mystery novel from their porch. When she opened her door and saw me standing there with a folder pressed to my chest, she didn't ask a single question. She stepped aside and said, "Come in, I've been waiting for this." Waiting. That word stung and comforted me all at once. Over sweet tea and cornbread, she told me everything she'd seen over the past few years. How Harold had told her I'd been struggling mentally. How he asked her not to let me borrow anything sharp, just in case. How he nearly bragged about handling the household on days I was supposedly too tired to function. How she'd seen me walk perfectly steady and bright on days he claimed I'd been confused for hours. I recorded every word, with her permission. Then she added something that made my breath catch. I knew something wasn't right the day he came asking if he could have your mail delivered to a P.O. box for your safety. I told him absolutely not. My stomach twisted. How long ago was that? 6 months, she said, squeezing my hand. Baby, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to overstep, but I should have. I shook my head. You're helping now. That's what matters. When I left her house, I had my first official witness. Next, I visited the community center where I'd volunteered before Harold talked me out of it to rest more. The women there, Miss Gloria, Anita, and Pastor Marie, welcomed me with open arms. They noticed the change in my face before I spoke a word. You've been carrying something heavy, haven't you? Pastor Marie said. I told them, not everything, but enough. The room grew quiet. Then Miss Gloria, an 80-year-old powerhouse who could read truth from a mile away, placed her hand over mine. Honey, she said, I watched Harold control the conversation every time y'all came to events. I watched him answer questions directed at you. I watched him steer you away when people asked how you were doing. I've seen this before. I know what this is. What is it? I whispered. Erasure, she said. He was slowly erasing you from your own life. The words landed like a stone in my chest. Heavy, true, liberating. They each offered statements, written, signed, dated. By the time I left the center, I had more than witnesses. I had a circle, a community, a sisterhood of women who had survived men like Harold or had supported others who had. Women who saw me, women who believed me, women who handed me the language for what I had endured. That evening, I met with Attorney Rhodes again, this time with a stack of folders so full they barely closed. She spread the papers across her desk and nodded with growing satisfaction. This, she said softly, is exactly what we need. You're building a case stronger than anything he could manufacture. She tapped the timeline I had created. And this, she added, will be what ends his attempt to control your life. As she organized the last folder, she looked up. You're doing more than gathering evidence. You're reclaiming your story. When I walked out of her office, the sky was turning a warm shade of orange, the kind of sunset that feels like closure, wearing gold. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared of the shadows behind me. I had allies. I had documentation. I had truth. I had a community that refused to let me fall. And Harold? He still believed he could outmaneuver me. He didn't know that the battle he thought he was fighting alone. I was no longer fighting alone either. The county courtroom wasn't large. Rows of wooden benches, pale walls, a podium that had seen too many stories end in tears. But for me, that room felt like a battlefield. Not because I feared losing. I had already lost everything worth losing the night Harold tried to hand me a glass meant to break my mind. No, this courtroom felt like a battlefield because for the first time in months, maybe years, I finally had something to fight with. Evidence, witnesses, the truth. And Harold? He had nothing left but performance. He arrived wearing his nicest jacket, the navy one he reserved for Easter Sunday and funerals. His hair was combed, his face freshly shaved, eyes red with exhaustion. But he still tried to force a warm smile at the judge when he walked in. Manipulators always think charm is their strongest weapon. They forget charm can't rewrite facts. When the bailiff called our names, Harold straightened and walked to the podium with the trembling confidence of a man convinced the system would protect him. He'd filed his motion first. That was his final play. He wanted emergency guardianship. He wanted the state to declare me unable to care for myself. He wanted control legalized. He cleared his throat. Your Honor, I'm here because I'm deeply concerned for my wife. She's been struggling mentally, confusion, mood swings, forgetting daily tasks. She's been acting irrationally. I've done everything I can to support her, but she's become a danger to herself and— Stop. Judge Myers didn't even look up from her papers. Mr. Collins, you submitted no medical evidence, no evaluations, no incident reports from professionals, only your own statements. Harold blinked. Well, yes, because I'm the one who sees her every day. And I'll consider that, the judge replied, once we hear from your wife and her counsel. That's when Harold saw her, Attorney Camille Rhodes, standing beside me, crisp navy blazer, expression sharp enough to cut steel, his face drained of color. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Mrs. Collins, the judge said, you may speak. I stepped forward, spine straight, voice steady in a way I hadn't heard in years. Your Honor, I began, my husband has misrepresented my mental state. He has been attempting to create a false narrative for months, telling neighbors, professionals, and even this court that I am declining. But what he calls symptoms are not medical. They're manufactured. Murmurs rippled through the room. My husband, I continued, has been secretly administering unregulated compounds and herbal extracts intended to mimic signs of cognitive decline. This is not speculation. This is documented. I handed a folder to the clerk who gave it to the judge. Inside, pharmacy logs, the recording of Evelyn's collapse, the pamphlet from the memory center, fake evaluations with Harold's handwriting, documents of guardianship he prepared without my knowledge. Harold's face twisted. This is absurd. She's twisting everything. Mr. Collins, the judge said sternly, you will wait your turn. Camille stepped forward smoothly. Your Honor, in addition to these documents, we have witnesses, multiple witnesses. One by one, the courtroom doors opened. Mrs. Turner, my neighbor, Pastor Marie from the community center, Miss Gloria, fire in her eyes, Nurse Talbot, steady and unshakable. Harold's jaw fell open. Each of these women, Camille said, has observed Mr. Collins speaking on his wife's behalf unnecessarily, telling others she was confused, unstable, or unwell, claims that contradict their own observations. Then came the big blow. We also have testimony from the pharmacist, Camille added, confirming no prescriptions have been filled under Mrs. Collins's name since 2018, despite Mr. Collins telling Your Honor that she has been on medication for years. The judge's stare sharpened. Harold began to shake. I watched his hands tremble the same way they had trembled the night Evelyn drank the juice, except this time there was no panic to hide behind, just fear, bare and raw. Your Honor, he sputtered. They're lying. They're all— Sit down, the judge commanded. He sat. For the first time in our marriage, Harold sat because I wasn't the one speaking. The judge was. Camille continued. Furthermore, we have documentation from the memory center where Mr. Collins attempted to admit his wife. He listed fabricated symptoms and marked that she should not be informed of the placement. He also falsified pre-admission evaluations. The judge flipped through the papers. Her eyes darkened. Mr. Collins, she said slowly, did you attempt to commit your wife to a memory facility without her knowledge? Harold opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I was trying to help her. She wasn't herself. Sir, the judge cut in, the only person demonstrating concerning behavior here is you. The words hit him like a physical blow. His shoulders slumped, his head dropped, and like every manipulator when their lies finally collapse, he reached for his last weapon, tears. He started to cry, loud, dramatic, chest-heaving sobs. I love her, he choked. I love her so much. I've just been so overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do. I was trying to protect her. The judge held up a hand. Enough. You are not on trial for your tears. You are here for your actions. Harold sobbed harder. I didn't move. I didn't reach for him. I didn't soften. For 40 years, I had been expected to soothe him through every storm. This storm? He created it. He could drown alone. The judge placed the papers down with finality. "Mrs. Collins," she said, "based on the evidence presented, the court finds you fully competent. I am denying the petition for emergency guardianship. Furthermore, I am issuing a protective order preventing Mr. Collins from making any medical, financial, legal, or residential decisions on your behalf." Harold gasped. "Your Honor!" But she wasn't finished. "I am also referring this case to Adult Protective Services for investigation into possible elder abuse and coercive control." A sound left Harold's mouth, something between a whimper and a plea. "As for residence," the judge added, "given the risk factors, Mr. Collins must vacate the marital home until the investigation concludes." He jerked upright. "What? Where am I supposed to go?" The judge lifted a brow. "That is not this court's concern." The gavel fell. Just like that, 40 years of control shattered. As the bailiff approached Harold to escort him out, he turned to me. Eyes swollen, face blotched, disbelief coating every feature. "You did this to me," he whispered. I looked him dead in the eye. "No," I said quietly. "You did this to yourself." The bailiff led him away, his footsteps fading down the hallway like the final echoes of a life I no longer belonged to. When the courtroom finally emptied, I sat alone on the wooden bench, breathing in a way I hadn't breathed in years. Steady, full, free. This wasn't the end. Investigations would come, more hearings, more rebuilding, more truth to reveal. But for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't surviving. I was winning. In the weeks that followed the courtroom showdown, the echoes of the gavel still hung in the air like a warning bell. For Harold, it wasn't just the sound of judgment. It was the sound of a life crumbling, one consequence at a time. And the most powerful part? I didn't have to lift a finger. His own actions did all the work. The county sheriff arrived the same afternoon to escort him out of the house. I watched through the window as Harold packed a duffel bag with shaking hands, stuffing clothes inside like a man trying to outrun his own shadow. He glared at me once, briefly, before looking away, as if he couldn't stand the reflection of what he'd become. He left without saying goodbye. And for the first time in 40 years, the house exhaled. But Harold's unraveling didn't stop at the curb. 3 days later, Adult Protective Services contacted me with updates. The investigator, Miss Hampton, was a precise woman with a cool, steady presence. She spread her notes across my dining table, the same table where Harold used to sit and talk over me, and gave me a calm nod. "Mrs. Collins, the claims your husband made about your mental decline don't match any verifiable evidence. In fact, the consistent reports suggest he orchestrated an ongoing campaign of coercive control." Coercive control. The phrase was clinical, but it hit like a lightning bolt. "What happens next?" I asked. "Well," she said, "we'll be speaking with your neighbors, your pharmacist, your community center contacts, reviewing the documents he submitted, and evaluating whether his actions constitute criminal liability." "Criminal?" I whispered. She nodded. "Falsified medical reports, attempted involuntary placement, potential poisoning. These are serious. We'll be expanding the investigation to the county prosecutor." Suddenly, everything Harold feared, everything he panicked about, was becoming real, but now through the proper channels. Meanwhile, the ripples in his life spread quickly. His sister called me, voice sharp with anger. "What did you do to Harold?" she demanded. I calmly repeated the facts. Not my feelings, not speculation, just the truth. At the end of the call, her voice cracked. He told us you were losing your mind." "I know," I said. "He told everyone." Silence. A long, guilty silence. Then she whispered something I didn't expect. "If everything you're saying is true, he needs help." That was the thing about Harold. He'd performed the role of devoted husband so long, people didn't know how to reconcile the mask with the monster behind it. They needed evidence. They needed time. And slowly, the truth bled through every crack he'd tried to plaster. Within 2 weeks, His employer put him on administrative leave after hearing about the investigation. Liability concerns, the letter said. And because the guardianship attempt was now public record, people at church, the same people he tried to convince I was fading mentally, began whispering. The sympathy he expected never came. Without access to my accounts, his financial stability evaporated fast. He called his cousin, his brother, 2 coworkers. No one agreed to let him stay more than a night or 2. Manipulators always discover how few people truly trust them when the mask falls. Meanwhile, Evelyn, his mother, remained under hospital care, recovering slowly. APS interviewed her too, though her attitude hadn't changed. She still snarled my name like it was a curse word. But even she couldn't ignore one truth. Harold had given her the drink meant for me, and that shame, that humiliation, tore through her pride like wildfire. When APS asked if she wanted to pursue a restraining order against him, she didn't hesitate. "Yes," she snapped. "Keep him away from me." That was the final blow. Harold called me that night from a borrowed phone. His voice sounded cracked, desperate, drenched in the fear of a man watching every safety net disintegrate. "Why are you doing this?" he pleaded. I answered without anger. "I didn't do this. You did. You're ruining my life." "You tried to take mine," I said. Silence flooded the line, heavy, choking silence. Then the smallest, most fragile whisper came through. "I didn't think you'd fight back." And that was the moment I understood something deeply, painfully true. Harold never believed I had power, because he never believed I deserved it. The world he built relied on me being quiet, being obedient, being malleable. He never imagined I'd stand up, or speak up, or gather witnesses, or freeze accounts, or walk into a courtroom with my spine straight and my story documented line by line. He thought he was dismantling my life. Instead, he dismantled his own. The investigation expanded. His reputation imploded. His financial access vanished. His mother turned on him. And the man who once controlled every inch of my life now couldn't control a single thing. And I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I didn't cheer for his downfall. I simply watched the truth do what it always does when finally unleashed. It devours the lies that tried to bury it. Harold had lost everything he built on deceit. And I began rebuilding everything he tried to steal. 6 months after the courtroom battle, the house felt like an entirely different place. Not because anything physical had changed. The walls were still the same soft cream color. The floors still creaked in the same familiar places. But because I had changed, the air didn't feel heavy anymore. The shadows didn't feel like threats. Silence no longer meant fear. It meant freedom. The first week Harold was gone, I didn't know what to do with the quiet. I found myself listening for footsteps, waiting for the familiar weight of him, hovering, watching, questioning. But the silence held steady. It wrapped around me like a blanket instead of a rope. It let me breathe. The first breath was shaky. The second was steadier. By the 10th, I didn't recognize the woman inside me anymore, and that was a good thing. In those early weeks, I devoted myself to restoring parts of my life I'd abandoned. One of the first things I did was take down the sticky notes Harold had placed all over the house. Turn off stove. Don't forget medication. Lock door at night. Notes he claimed helped me stay organized. Notes that were never for me, but for the story he was trying to build. I peeled each one off carefully and dropped them into a trash bag. With every note that fell, I felt lighter, stronger, more like myself. Then I went through the kitchen cabinets, removing every bottle Harold had ever given me. Each amber container clinked into the trash bin like a small victory. Getting rid of those bottles wasn't just cleaning. It was reclaiming my body, my mind, my truth. Once the clutter of manipulation was gone, I began adding pieces of myself back into the home. A painting I'd bought years ago but never hung because Harold said it was distracting. My favorite scented candles he always complained about. Bright yellow curtains that reminded me of the summers I'd spent with my grandmother in Charleston. Curtains Harold said were too cheerful. I hung them anyway. The room glowed, and one morning, as sunlight spilled through the yellow fabric, I realized I was waking up without dread for the first time in decades. I started volunteering again at the community center. At first, I joined the senior yoga class, not because I could stretch well, I absolutely couldn't, but because I wanted to be around people who weren't trying to shrink me. After a few weeks, I helped organize a book club. Then I started teaching a beginner's crochet group once a month. Women gathered around me with stories of their own, some soft, some sharp, all familiar in one way or another. Women who had survived betrayals, manipulations, heartbreak, and invisibility. Women who looked at me not with pity, but with recognition. "You've changed," Miss Gloria said one afternoon as we folded chairs after class. "Into what?" I teased. Her smile was gentle. "Into who you were always meant to be." I didn't expect that sentence to stay with me, but it did. It lingered in the quiet moments, especially the ones I used to fill with fear. I even started taking short trips alone. Nothing grand. A drive to the farmer's market 2 towns over, a Saturday stroll through a historical garden, lunch in a cafe where nobody knew my name. I sat by the window with a slice of lemon pie and realized, somewhere between bites, that I didn't need permission to live. That was the moment something inside me clicked into place. My life wasn't restarting. It was finally beginning. As for Harold, the investigation concluded without me ever needing to see him again. APS found credible evidence of coercive control, medical misrepresentation, and attempted forced guardianship. The district attorney's office considered pressing charges for falsifying medical documents, though the case became tied up in legal backlogs. Harold's job terminated him. His mother refused to let him visit. His siblings distanced themselves. The man who tried to isolate me had ended up isolating himself. And I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I simply moved forward. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes stored in the attic, I found a picture of myself at 25, smiling wide, holding a paintbrush in one hand, a cup of coffee in the other. I stared at it for a long time, tracing the outline of the young woman who once dreamed boldly and loved freely. "I want to know you again," I whispered. So I dusted off the paintbrushes. I set up a table in the sunroom. I turned on soft jazz and dipped the brush into color, blue, then yellow, then green. And with each stroke, I found pieces of the life Harold tried to paint over, pieces that were mine, pieces that had survived. One evening, sitting on the porch, the sky turning a lavender dusk, I whispered something out loud, not to anyone, but to the air, to myself, to the decades I had lost and the decades I still had left. "I'm not afraid anymore." And the world, soft and warm around me, seemed to answer. "Good. Now live." There's a moment, after the chaos, after the storm, after the courtroom echo fades, when the world becomes painfully quiet, a quiet that doesn't crush you, but invites you to breathe, invites you to look inward, invites you to finally ask, how did I survive all of that and still remain myself? For me, that moment came on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and a notebook, not to make a list of chores or reminders, but simply to write, to let the truth flow without fear of being contradicted. I wrote about the woman I used to be, the woman Harold tried to convince me I was, and the woman I had finally become. Halfway through a sentence, I paused. The pen hovered over the page, and I whispered to the empty room. I almost lost myself, quietly, slowly, kindly. Because that's the part people don't talk about. That's the part nobody warns you of. Most harm doesn't arrive with fists or threats. Most destruction doesn't shout. It whispers. It smiles. It disguises itself as care, as concern, as love. And it convinces you that your discomfort is your imagination. Family betrayal rarely looks like a villain in the dark. It looks like someone handing you a glass of juice and asking, "Is it good?" That's why I decided to share my story, not to punish Harold. Life took care of that on its own, not to shock anyone, though the truth is shocking. Not to play the victim, because I'm not one. I share it because someone watching this, someone reading this, someone sitting silently in their house right now, might be going through the same slow unraveling I went through. Maybe they feel off, but can't explain why. Maybe someone in their life keeps saying, "You're just tired," or "You're imagining things." Maybe they've started doubting their memory, their voice, their strength. Maybe they feel small in their own home. And maybe, just maybe, they've accepted that smallness as normal. If that's you, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not losing your mind. You are losing your fear. And that is what scares the people who want to control you. I didn't reclaim my life with one big cinematic moment. I didn't shout. I didn't break plates. I didn't burn bridges. I reclaimed my life through small, steady acts of truth. A bank form, a pharmacy record, a phone call, a witness, a signature, a breath. I reclaimed it by choosing myself, quietly, consistently, until the truth became louder than the lies. And I want whoever is listening to know this. You don't have to wait for permission to save yourself. You don't need someone else to validate your instinct. If something feels wrong, it is. If something feels heavy, it is. If someone makes you doubt your reality, that is the danger. Your intuition is not broken. It's muffled beneath someone else's script. Break the script. Rewrite your story. And if you think you're alone, you're not. Help exists. Resources exist. Community exists. People like me exist. People who survived. People who rebuilt. People who came out the other side with scars that glimmer instead of wound. I look around my life now, my sunlit curtains, my paint brushes, the soft hum of freedom in my home, and I realize something I never understood before. Survival is not the ending. Rebirth is. And to everyone watching, everyone listening, everyone who stayed until the last word, ask yourself, quietly, honestly, the same question I finally learned to ask. Am I living my life or just surviving someone else's? Because the moment you choose yourself, everything changes. Your home changes. Your breath changes. Your world changes. You change. And that is the ending and the beginning of my story. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched you, triggered something familiar, or opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment. Share your thoughts. Tell me your story. And if you want more true-to-life family drama, betrayal, and empowerment stories, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And I'll see you in the next chapter.